10-4, inverses of trigonometric functions. We've seen it like find the sine of 30 degrees, and you find the angle, or the coordinate for sine of 30 degrees. Now we're going to be given the coordinate and have to go back and figure out what the reference angle was, what the angles are. So I think this would be helpful. If you draw yourself a little graph, we have quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And in quadrant 1, remember that sine is your y-coordinate and cosine is your x-coordinate. Now in quadrant 1, they're both positive. So we'll say our sine is positive, our cosine is positive, and then tangent is you divide the y and the x, y divided by x. So if you have a positive divided by a positive, it'll give you a positive number. Great, that's the easiest one. Quadrant 2 is when your x is negative, and x is our cosine. So our sine is still positive, our cosine is going to be negative, and then our tangent would be a positive divided by negative, which is negative. Quadrant 3, both your x and y are negative, so our sine will be negative, cosine will be negative, but tangent would be a negative divided by negative, which comes out positive. And the last quadrant, quadrant 4, that is a positive x but a negative y. So our sine will be negative, our cosine will be positive, and then you have one of each, so your tangent would be negative. Fantastic. You can remember that. You can remember the reference angle trick with your fingers. You're gold. All right, so find the values between 0 and 2 pi radians, which is one complete circle, for which sine is equal to root 2 over 2. Now, that's a positive number, so let's see in which quadrants are the signs positive. That would be quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. Now, I didn't give you guys very much room to write on this, so squeak it in where you can. So thinking about quadrant 2, root 2 over 2, sine, remember, is our y-coordinate, which would be our fingers to the right. So how can I get 2 fingers to the right? You put down your middle finger, right? And the middle finger represents a 45-degree reference angle. So we're looking at a 45-degree reference angle in quadrants 1 and quadrant 2. Finding that in quadrant 1 is very easy because whatever your angle is, that's your reference angle. So quadrant 1 will be 45 degrees. But for quadrant 2, remember your reference angle is 180 minus our angle. So we can just do 180 minus 45, which is 135 degrees. So we'll say 45 degrees and 135 degrees. But we're also going to try getting this in radians. So we can just do a simple conversion, which we've done 100 times. So we can say 45 over 1 times pi over 180. Now you're going to see 45 a lot because it's a reference angle. So 45 goes into 180 4 times. So our final answer here would be pi over 4. Now when we're doing 135, now just remember 135 is 45 times 3. So 135 will turn into 3. 180 is 45 times 4. So we end up with 3 pi over 4. So here would be our 2 angles given in radians. So we could say pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. I want all of those answers, degrees and radians. And yeah, it's a lot of work. Find the values for which tan of an angle is equal to 1. So when tangent is 1, that means that the x and the y are the exact same values. Now the only times that could happen are when they're both root 2 over 2, or if they were both negative root 2 over 2. So think of that. Root 2 over 2 or negative root 2 over